Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to my channel. My name is Joanna. If this is your first time watching, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for giving this your time of day and your energy. I hope that whatever I share with you is going to be ultimately helpful in you accessing more peace in your life. I say the word accessing because it is about accessing peace from within. So if you are wanting to have more peace in your life, I hope in some way, shape, or form, I can contribute to you experiencing more peace in your life. And for that, I'm very grateful. I would love for you to share this channel with a friend or two who you feel might benefit from this information. Subscribe, like, comment. It tells the YouTube algorithm that this information is worthwhile seeing. And I and my team believe that the more people are exposed to this type of information, the more individuals will begin to choose better and more peaceful life for themselves. And notice I'm using the word choose. And that's a big word. For example, we cannot escape the reality of what is, but we can choose to have a different view of it. And the moment we have a different view of what our reality is, our reality actually changes. Our experience of that reality changes. So I don't know why I said this, but somehow that was important for me to say. So thank you so much for being here. For those of you who are returning, once again, I'm very grateful for you being here. Without you being here, listening to this, I wouldn't do what I do. And I love connecting with higher consciousness. It makes me feel closer to home. It always reminds me where I come from, and this allows me to bring that information for you and remind you where you ultimately come from. So thank you so much for being here, because it takes a lot of guts talking to you and telling you that I am talking to Source. Some would call it God. But the reality is that's exactly what's happening. I'm communicating with higher consciousness. Not because my name is Joanna, but because I know I can. And my job is to communicate to you that you too can. In fact, you always do. You just don't have conscious awareness of it. So whether you like it or not, you are consciously or unconsciously connected to source of what is, or to source of all that is, which essentially means you are in constant communication with what is often called God. And I think that's the ultimate purpose of me doing this work, is to help me remember and help you remember that you are all part of this thing some call God. And it's all frequency based. In other words, if you don't remember that you are that, then that means frequentially speaking, you are at a level of frequency that tells you otherwise. Not because it's a good or bad thing, but because you are in this experience right now, but you are choosing to be in a different experience. By you watching this, you coming back to this information, you are consciously or unconsciously choosing to remember where you come from, who you are, and your connection to God or source or all that is, and this connection being with you 24/7. So thank you for coming back and reminding yourself that you are not your body, you're not your emotions, you're not your thoughts, you're certainly not your fears and limitations. Because the more you see that, which is not you, the more you can see the you that's underneath that which you are not. So, and I love doing this kind of work. It's to even call it work is kind of weird to me, but it is work. It's how I support myself. So thank you for helping me do this work, because I really enjoy this work. I mean, let's face it, who wouldn't enjoy communicating with the universe? Like, who wouldn't enjoy that? It's something I believe we ultimately all want to do. Why? Well, think of it this way. If you had access to God 24/7, wouldn't you want to be accessing God 24/7 for a whole bunch of things, information, resolutions, solutions, because God knows it all, right? So, and the funny thing is that we are in communication with the universe all the time. The only thing that gets in the way is this. It's our thoughts and our programming. So even though we are constantly surrounded by the frequency of God, an all-knowing frequency, energy, consciousness, intelligence, we are often not aware of it. We are sometimes in denial of it because we have been taught that we can't communicate with God. Well, if God is all there is and you are part of God, which means God made you, and you can substitute source, whatever word you want, unicorn for all that matters. So if God has created you and there's nothing but God or source, therefore you being part of source means you have to have source within you. So it's like, it's you. It doesn't matter how you look at it, unless you believe that you are not that. So now we're coming back to our belief system. So the only thing that really prevents us from truly consciously connecting with source or God is our own limitations, our own perceptions of what we think and what we believe. If I, as Joanna, did not believe that I can communicate with source, and I've had my problems with that a lot, I wouldn't be able to do just that because I would stop myself from doing so. I would prevent myself from doing so. I would doubt my abilities, which I still sometimes do. But just because I doubt them, it doesn't mean that I don't know the bigger truth. I just somehow I know that we are all from that space, but then I have my limited thinking. And my limited thinking makes me doubt what I know. And you, every single one of you, know this at the very core and depth of you. You know that you are part of source. It's the ultimate truth. It cannot be escaped. Which means if it cannot be escaped, it's inside of you. It's inside of you. This truth is inside of you. This, in fact, is what Nirvana is. Speaking of, Universe and I were having a conversation on the whole concept of Nirvana. And I said, well, what's so great about Nirvana? So I tuned in, and basically, Nirvana felt like bliss, where there is a complete embodiment, knowing. It's beyond knowing. It's an embodiment of knowing beyond the mind that you are part of God or source, and that it is part of you. There is no distinction. There is no separation. And with it comes just massive peace, because we are so detached from everything. We're so detached from how we identify ourselves, because we no longer identify ourselves anything other than part of source. And what's interesting about that is that when you're in that bliss, nothing really matters. It's like you don't really care. It's not that you don't care, it's just you don't care. You're not attached, which is kind of sort of dangerous to be in the real world and having that awareness. So it's an interesting thing. Nirvana feels like bliss, but at the end, but also that space, in that space, you let go of all identities, all attachments, all insecurities, and everything just becomes an experience without the need to fight, to grab onto anything, to hang on. It just becomes part of an experience. And things just don't make sense. It's not that they don't make sense, it's we stop making sense of things. We just see it as an experience. It's a very strange place to be. So it's not really, I would say, feasible to have nirvana and live in regular 3D life as we humans live life right now. It almost like it feels like being in nirvana and then living in our 3D world. It doesn't mix. Like it just somehow doesn't mix. I don't know how to describe it. I suspect it is why very, 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 very few people in the world attain this nirvana. And maybe they don't have to go out and live, quote unquote, the real life. It's like the world their experience of life is completely different. I don't even know how to explain it or why I'm even saying it. I guess what I'm saying is we all want that at the end of the day. But what that means is we have to let go of all our identity. And that is a big job. That is the biggest job we will ever have, is to let go of our identity. But our identity is what makes us human. So we don't want to let go of our humanness. After all, we are here to have an experience as a human. So although I feel that most people are seeking that space of nirvana, I don't feel it's absolutely necessary for us to enjoy a better quality of life. I don't feel we have to go to the extreme to have this extreme nirvana in order to have a better world. In fact, if we're in nirvana, then it's like life doesn't make sense. We're probably we don't want to be here anymore, because it's like, okay, I've done this thing called Earth. Okay, next. Like you've done it all. And since you're here listening to this, then you're clearly not in that space, because you wouldn't be watching this. It would make no sense to you. And that's okay. I wouldn't necessarily say go seek nirvana. I mean, for sure, get yourself to a place where you feel more at peace with yourself, for sure. But the whole thing about seek nirvana, no, whether you do that or not, that's up to you. Why don't we first start with helping us all bring a little bit more peace into our hearts, a little bit more peacefulness, a little bit more quiet, a little bit less chaos, a little bit more understanding, a little bit more of compassion. And actually what I'm describing is the divine feminine. So I'm shifting gears a little bit from nirvana to divine feminine. But as you know, divine feminine is on the rise. So divine feminine, as opulent as it is energetically, it also exposes things to the surface. So as we are moving towards the Aquarian age, which is my understanding, we are inching closer and closer to being more, or to living more in our hearts, to embody more of our feminine, which is our emotion, our feeling, our intuition. The head is a very masculine trait. It's absolutely necessary, but it's been used and abused. Let's put it that way. And the divine feminine is coming in order to smooth things out. So why am I saying this? As you know, as you can see, the world is undergoing a drastic change. And what is this change about? It's basically a collapse of existing systems, structures, systems. And my understanding is that we can't go back. We can never go back to what was. Well, we can't go back to what was because it's no longer. Okay. We can only move forward. But how do I say it? Since we can only move forward, we can't go back. Why don't we choose to experience something different than what we are used to experiencing? Unless we want to experience the same thing over and over again. I suspect we don't. That's why we are having this human revolution happening. Things are coming out to the surface. Things are being exposed. Things are being seen. And with that comes a lot of awareness and a lot of knowledge. And when we put knowledge into an experience, what we have is wisdom. Why don't we all look at our past and seek out wisdom? Wisdom is, how do I describe wisdom? I mean, I'm not looking at the dictionary. I just want to see the feel of wisdom. Wisdom is something, it's a knowing. It sits kind of inside. It's a knowing. It's an unmistakable knowing. And wisdom only comes through an experience. Have you ever listened to someone who is very wise? Oftentimes they're kind of quiet. They don't say very much, but what they do say strikes a chord. And why am I saying this? Right now, wisdom is what we are all seeking. We are all seeking wisdom. So how do we seek wisdom? The only way to seek wisdom is to look at our experiences and ask ourselves the question, what have my experiences taught me about me? What have my experiences shown me about me? And there's like a gazillion different answers. Okay? What has my experience, how have my experiences limited me? Now, if you're limited by your experience, you likely don't ask that question. I don't even know if that makes sense, but it's time for asking really important questions. How are we limiting ourselves? How are we denying ourselves? How are we, dare I say, lying to ourselves? Sometimes it's knowingly, sometimes it's unknowingly. How do we move forward in a different way with more love and more compassion? How do we bring more peace into this world? Because I'm assuming that's what you want. That's what everyone wants at the end of the day. So how do we bring more peace? Do we bring more peace by repeating the same things over and over again that haven't brought us peace? Because if we continue to do that, then we're not going to experience more peace. That's just obvious. So in order to experience something different, we have to look at our past and recognize what we've learned so that perhaps we don't have to do it again over and over again. Why? Because the whole idea is that once you learn a lesson, you never have to repeat it again, unless you want to, unless you choose to. So we are all, I could say, learning a lot of lessons right now. And these are big lessons. These are humanity type lessons. These are big lessons. And I don't even like using the word lesson, because to me as Joanna, when I say, oh, you're learning a lesson, it's like you were stupid. No, it's not that. It's about awareness. It's about awareness. So lesson is a word that we recognize, but we're here all to gain greater awareness of who we are. Why? Why is it important to have greater awareness? Well, for one, you're far less restricted. You restrict yourself less when you have greater awareness. It just goes hand in hand. When we have greater awareness, we see more options. We can perceive things much more clearly. We can see things further into the future, quote unquote, because we have more awareness. Less awareness prevents us from all those things. So if our awareness is limited right now, then that means our experiences are going to be relative to our awareness right now. We cannot have a different experience that is beyond the awareness we are at right now. It's like saying, what example could I give? I don't know what example to give. Okay, the simplest example is, because this one makes sense to everyone. I want lots of money, but I think of myself as poor. Well, it's either one or the other. You can't have both because they're completely different vibrations, right? So for you to have more money, you have to deal with this issue that you have around money, perhaps insecurities around money. So that's what I'm saying. So it's time to look back to our past for some important lessons. And that's both collectively and individually. And we all have an opportunity to do just that right now, to learn very important lessons that we have been, dealt. Important lessons. And these are challenges. And there are a lot of challenges in the world. I don't know why I want to say this. Okay, one of the things they want me to say is, for example, hatred is self-created. Okay? Yeah, it's, this, I can't share with you this cup which says hatred. Hatred comes from me. Let's use me as an example. So hatred is self-created. Okay, so if I have hatred in my heart, I'm naturally going to vibe out that hatred into the world. So I am creating this hatred. Now someone can say, well, this person made you hate him or her. No, hating that person is my decision. I choose to hate that person. I can be mad, I can be angry. Choosing to hate is my decision, is my choice. I'm not saying it's not always easy not to do that, but it is, I recognize that. Okay? So why would I want to feel hate? Because let me tell you, it doesn't feel very good. I recognize it. I feel it's very potent. Energetically, it's very potent. But it's extraordinarily limited. Like energetically wise, it's like a rock that's sitting in my heart. It's like, it's like this heaviness. Why would I want to feel that? How does that make sense to me? I wouldn't. So I have to deal with me. I have to deal with the part of me that wants to hate. Hey, part of me that wants to hate, why do you want to hate? Perhaps the answer from that part is because it separates you from other people. Okay, why would you want to be separated from other people? Because I'm told I'm separate. Okay, all right. The point I'm trying to make is this. If we want more peace in the world, we have to see what's in our hearts. We can't blame other people for having a less than peaceful world if we, as part of the people, don't have peace within ourselves, because we are contributing to our peace or non-peace or somewhere in between. Not as a blame, but as a powerful creator. We contribute to everything that we experience. Does that mean that it's your fault that there is a war happening on this other side of the world? Absolutely not. But you are part of this experience. You are part of this experience. Perhaps you have an inner war, and that's the thing that is contributing to there being wars outside. I, as Joanna, suspect that that's true. Because if we individually and collectively didn't have war happening on the inside, that would never be reflected on the outside. It just wouldn't happen, because the world is a reflection of what's within, collectively speaking, right? So this is a really good time to recognize what we are at war with within ourselves, because that is ultimately what keeps us away from Nirvana or from more peace. I could say it's the simple, it's the most difficult, yet the simplest thing in the world. It's facing your shadows. It's facing the parts of you want to hide from. We all have them. It's just part of human nature. There's no point in feeling bad about it. It is what it is. Just accept it. In fact, it is the acceptance of our shadows that allows us to be in charge of our shadows or of our fears, rather than our shadows or our fears being in control of us. Does fear control you, or do you control your fear? I suspect fear controls you. It's pretty standard. If you can control your fear, then you're in a pretty good place. Now, there are people who can control certain fears, and I'm sure you can control some fear. If you have a fear of spider, you probably are not going to freak out too loudly. You're just going to control it, right? But there's other fears that we can't control. Fear of not having money, point is, some fears are harder to control. However, I suspect there are some fears within you that are very much in control of you. For example, a fear of not being good enough is usually going to be something in control of you. And how is it going to be in control of you? You will limit yourself from opportunities in life, because that belief system, that fear is going to say, no, that's not for you. So it controls you. It controls you, it limits you, you're not in control of it. In fact, if you were in control of it, it wouldn't be as much of a fear anymore. It would be a challenge, but it wouldn't be as much of a fear anymore. So this is not so much about controlling our fear, per se. It's more about recognizing how fear controls you and I. And it does. Fear controls you and I. The interesting point is that the more fear you have inside of you, the less in control you are, because your fear is in control of you. And if your fear is in control of you, you are the victim of your own fear. You are the victim of your own fear, which means you are not making life happen. Life happens because of, or life happens to you. Your fear dictates how life happens. Is that you in control of your life? Now, I'm painting a very black and white example just to illustrate the point here. Because fear is always going to be limiting. However, some fear is very constructive and very important and very necessary. I would want you to have a fear of tiger chasing you, because I'd want you to run. I'd want you to survive. In fact, if you're in Nirvana and nothing, you don't really care, yeah, that lion is going to eat you. Yeah, unless that's what you wanted, for sure. But anyway, that's just a little bit of a digression here. So why are we talking about this? Why are we talking about these fears? Why are we talking about shadows? Because we are here to learn and move through and overcome our shadows and or fears. That's where Nirvana lives. It's outside of your fear. So the more fear you have, the more fear I have, the more I will limit myself from reaching that space of total peace. Fear is very loud. It's very noisy. And in some cases it should be. It has its place. But for the most part, it's overworking. And when there's a lot of noise that is fear-based, we in actuality will have a difficult time tuning in and hearing Source or God, because this is going to prevent us from hearing Source or God. And as I've said earlier, Source has all the information you will ever need and want. It's your go-to place if you have a challenge. The universe has all the answers. Your logic does not. And fear-based thoughts prevent you from reaching that space that has all the answers for various reasons. Perhaps you don't believe you can access answers. Perhaps you believe you need a middleman. Perhaps you believe that it doesn't even exist. Oh, it does. You're made of it. But perhaps your belief system says you can't. For example, what if I talk to God and then I think I'm crazy? Well, then you're a crazy person talking to God. I mean, if that's how you want to look at it, okay. I suspect you're not going to be diagnosed as a mad person. Although there are some people who would fall under the category of being, let's say, schizophrenic and having certain conversations with imagined. But even then, sometimes I wonder if there's a bleed through. People with these conditions, maybe they're actually accessing some awareness that we are not aware of. And to us, it feels like it's mad. But for the most part, you're not going to be in that space. So what is the point that we're trying to make here? To listen and hear God speak to you, or source, you have to let go of your limited thoughts and fears of what God or source is. Okay? So if your belief is that God needs you to be good, and you haven't been good all the time, I mean, who has? Then you're going to believe that you are undeserving of connecting with Source or God. The Source or God doesn't care if you are good or bad, because it doesn't hold any judgments about you or your experience. The Source is simply experiencing itself through you so that it knows what it can do. It has no judgments. It doesn't have an agenda. It doesn't, quote unquote, care if you're good or bad. It doesn't even care that it doesn't care. It has no motives. You, on the other hand, believe that you have to be good in order to communicate with God. No. That's a belief system. And you have that. If you have that belief system, you're going to stop yourself from communicating with Source, which is all around you. It's all within you. It's throughout you 24/7. And it has its own distinct voice. And each person will experience that voice in different ways. It may not be an audible voice. It's not for me, but it's this internal voice. It's a knowing. It's hard to describe. And the mind tries to interpret what that could be, because the mind is not used to, the logical mind, rational mind is not used to relying on this inner voice. So at first, relying on this knowing can be a little bit difficult because you're just not used to it. Just because you're not used to it doesn't mean it has not been there. It's always been there. You were just used to this. Your head, your mind. And that is very limited. In fact, that's where your shadows and fears come from. From your interpretations of your experiences. Yes, your interpretations of your experiences. It's how we interpret our experiences that we create these aspects in ourselves. We call them shadows. It's our interpretation of our experiences. And of course, our experiences shape us. And you are the product of your experiences right now. Your experiences have contributed to you being who you are, and you are an extraordinarily valuable person. But you do not have to let your past dictate your future anymore. You can say, I, from this point forward, choose to experience myself as a different person. I choose. And in order for you to experience yourself as a different person, you have to change how you see yourself. if you see yourself as an invaluable person, and that's just an example, you cannot have an experience of feeling of being a valuable person, because it's not how you identify with yourself. If you identify with yourself as not a good enough person, then that you are identifying yourself as a limitation. And perhaps in this lifetime, you're saying, I choose to no longer define myself by my limitations. Yay to that. This is really ultimately why we're all here. To realize that we are not our limitations. To recognize our limitations. Yes, we do have some limitations. We have a physical body. That's in many ways a limitation. But you can work with this limitation. There is so much more to you than what you know, and still being within a human physical body. So we are all here to experience more, not less. Well, unless it's less fear. Okay. But we're here to experience more, to expand, to become more, not because we have to, not because we're supposed to, but because we choose to. Because we choose to. If you identify yourself as not a good enough person, choose to identify yourself differently. How? By choosing, deciding, and accepting. Now, the mind will say, well, I can't accept something that's not true. Well, actually, you have been accepting what's not true your entire life. Because your identity is not the true you. You've accepted yourself as your identity. No, that's a lie. Not even real. It's a fantasy. So, to answer your question, how can you accept something that's not true? Meaning that something, how can you accept that you are worthy and not less than? Simply by deciding that you are. That's it. And then you have to look through all the layers that tell you otherwise. Those are called belief systems. Those are the things you want to look at. What does my belief system tell me about me and who I am, and therefore what is my experience? And I'm just throwing these very basic examples to illustrate the point. If you believe that you are not a lovable person because you have been hurt before, we all have, because you have been emotionally neglected, because you have been abandoned, and so many other things, and that led you to believe that you are somehow not good enough, you've learned to identify yourself as that. You need to change your identity. It's not that you're not good enough. Yes, these experiences may have led you to have that belief, but it's a belief. It isn't the truth. The truth is that you couldn't be more loved than you currently are right now. You just don't see it because you don't believe it. Because you don't believe you are it. Higher consciousness, Christ consciousness, is all about unconditional love. It's not the type of love that we humans feel when we're in love and we have love toward our child. Those are all types of love, but this is a constant. It's like, it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't have the emotional volatility. It's just solid. That permeates everything that you are. You've just disassociated yourself from it by believing something that you are not, that you are less than, that you are not valuable, that you are not worthy. It's absurd. How can you be not worthy when the consciousness that made you runs through you? In fact, you're made of it. You're made of it. You're not separate from it. You can't be. It's impossible. You're it. You just forgot. And all I'm doing is I am gently saying, knock, knock. Remember who you are. You're not your beliefs. If you believe you're not worthy, you're not that. So if you're not that, and that's a belief, and you can change your belief at any time you want, if you're not that, then what are you? Now, the question is, if you're not that, and you are all of what is, you have a very important choice or decision to make. And here's the choice or decision. Which do you choose to believe? This or that? I have an idea for you. Why don't you believe in both? You are both God in the flesh, and you are both a human being having an experience both at the same time. That's called integration. You are both. You are both a human with your belief systems, and you are also that which has made you. You're it. You're not separate from it, you're it. You're both. The question is, do you believe that? Do you choose to believe that? And what do you do with it? Here's the fun part. What you choose to do with it is absolutely up to you. But I will tell you one thing. The moment you embody the knowing, the remembering that you are part of source of all that is, do you realize how it changes everything? Nothing outside you changes. In fact, what I'm describing is Nirvana. Nothing changes outside. What changes is how you see things. Yet everything stays the same. What's the point if everything stays the same? When you change inside, when you realize what you are, who you are, where you come from, and that you also are having a human experience, that multiplies your power of creation exponentially. How? Because you also have a belief and a knowing that you are virtually unlimited. So you are both limited and unlimited at the same time. Let your rational mind chew on that for a moment. In fact, my job is to help break down the rigid thinking, and it's like putting a circle into a square. Doesn't fit. What do you mean I'm all powerful but I'm limited? You are experiencing certain limitations. Yes, a lot of them are based on your belief, but you are made up of, and it runs through you, of this thing that's called God, source, creation, whatever you want to call it. You're both. You're experiencing both. You mean I'm both human and non-human? Well, yes, duh. Been trying to tell you that for a long time. What do you do with that? That's up to you. But I suspect it's going to help you see things a little bit differently. Because that reminder of that knowing, you know what it does? It makes you go, I can relax a little bit more. I don't have to try so hard. I don't have to strive so hard. In fact, all I have to do is just go with the flow to the best of my ability. Why? Because it doesn't matter what happens. It's neither good nor bad. I'm just having a human experience. And of course, the good and the bad and the morals come with a human experience. But you're also more than a human. It allows you to relax. Allows you to be a little bit less preoccupied with 3D constraints. It minimizes a lot of this, and it allows you to actualize yourself a lot more. You're here to self-actualize, to realize what you're capable of. And remembering that you are essentially made up of particles of God, of Source, it doesn't make you separate from it, which means you don't need a middleman. You don't You don't need to thrive to be good enough. You don't need to be begging for forgiveness. You don't need to be saying, oh, please, please, please accept me. I'll be good. That's all constructs and belief systems. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not mocking those. Those are there for a reason, but they're belief systems. They're not the ultimate truth. And the truth as we know it is changing, isn't it? And it's changing because we are realizing certain truths within ourselves. We are beginning to realize that, well, as I've said, we are all part of all that is. No beginning and no end. And what we do with it, that's up to us, but it has a tremendous potential, is what I will say. For one, when we all realize that we are all source, there is no need for competition. If we want to compete because we kind of want to have a good game, sure, but if it comes from a space of lack, there's no need. Because the knowing that we are all part of source and sources within us, source knows no lack. There's no lack. It's only if we create our own lack by what we imagine. Now, I'm not saying we are not experiencing lack in the world, in the physical world, but a lot of it has to do with our programming, right? So, where we are going, there's no coming back. You can't stop time from moving, even though there's no time. We can't make things go any faster, and we can't make things slow down. We just kind of sort of have to go with the flow. And the less we try to control everything, the better off we will be. And I'll be the first one to tell you as a human being that that's probably one of the biggest things humans struggle with is issues around control. Okay. So for some of you, issues around control will be coming up now, right about now, because control is a big issue on planet Earth. And we're all humans. We just, we want to control. We want to control for so many reasons. Permanency is one of those things. We want to control our permanency. That's a problem because permanency doesn't really exist. Like there's no such thing as permanency in the universe. Of course, yes, trees live, 150 years, so we can call it permanent. But, 200 years down the road, there will be no tree. There's no such thing as permanent. And the more we try to hold on to something that is on its way out, the more we're going to struggle. And things are on the way out. And there is a lot of collapsing that's happening, and for good reasons. And some of those collapsing situations are not very comfortable, but the reason why they're collapsing is because they're not strong anymore. Anything that's collapsing right now, it's based on a weak foundation. It's on a weak foundation, and weaknesses are being exposed right now. So things have to tumble down in order for things to be rebuilt. That doesn't mean that we have to experience some sort of awful things in the world. No, but we are experiencing interesting things in the world, and there's a lot of division going on, right? So again, always remember, what is happening on the outside is reflected from what's happening on the inside. This is not putting blame on individual person saying you made war happening in Ukraine, for example. No, of course that's not the case. No, but we are all part of the collective. And as a collective, we are contributing to it. How? By experiencing inner world. Again, if we all have more peace in our world, in our inner world, we will express peace, more of that peace into the outer world. That's just the way it goes. Same if I choose to be angry, and if I decide to stay angry, or hate, if I choose to hate, I am going to do that. And I'll tell you one thing, you will not want to be around me because the energy sucks. It's a very low vibrating energy. Nobody wants to I'm not denying that hate doesn't exist. Well, that's probably why it's being brought up. Thank you. But it's not even so much hating other people. Yes, it's self-hatred. Apparently, we hold a lot of self-hatred inside of ourselves. Some of it has to do with religious dogma, being sinners, not being worthy of quote-unquote God's love. And we begin to look at ourselves like, what's wrong with me? I must be a terrible person. And apparently many people carry that within them without even knowing, because it's so deeply ingrained in culture and in DNA. Basically the whole idea of sin in some religions is to tell you that you are, you always have to beg for forgiveness, which means you always have to have something on top, right? And, the whole hierarchical thing, we need it on some level, but it's got to go, because it's not serving us anymore, not in the way it was intended. You can have someone lead, or you can have someone control. Now, what's interesting is a person who is leading has to be in control, has to have some control. But if they're controlling for their own selfish reasons, they may not be a good leader. And by the way, I'm just noticing what I'm saying. I'm not talking about what's happening in the US or politically speaking at all. It actually didn't even occur to me. I see how it could be taken that way. So I'm not saying anything about anyone in particular, but this is what wants to come through me. So that's interesting. Okay. Most people don't want to be controlled, although you'd be surprised. A lot of people want to be told what to do. It's actually surprising. A lot of people want to be told what to do because we're just so used to being told what to do. But when we are told what to do, we learn not to take responsibility for our lives, and we just continue living life being told what to do. And there's a lot of objections happening with people, and people are saying, no, that's not what I want to do anymore. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to see it this way anymore. I don't want to participate in this way anymore. I don't want that. I don't want that. I want something else. And whatever it is that we want, we have to be willing to get it. We have to be willing to do something about it. We have to be willing to participate with it. So, if we want more peace in the world, how are we going to create that? How are we going to help create that? First and foremost, back to square one. Find more peace within you. Cultivate more peace within you. Realize that your potential is based almost purely on what you think and what you believe. If you believe that you can't be more, you will not be. If someone leads you to believe that you can't be more and you buy it, you believe that you can't be more, you never will be. You never give yourself the opportunity or the pleasure to try. You just won't. On the other hand, when you start seeing or believing that there is so much more to you, you have to take steps necessary for you to prove that to yourself. And that can be scary. Because if you're not used to taking certain steps, taking a first step towards something greater can be scary. Not because it's bad, but because it's new, because it's different, because it's challenging. And we are shedding light on a lot of things right now. We are saying no to the things we don't want. We are saying yes to other things, but we have to be willing to do things towards that other yes. We have to create it. We have to create it. So if, for example, you want more love in your life or more money in your life or more whatever it is, how will you participate in creating that? You can't just be a bystander, because that experience you're going to be part of that experience. You have to be part of that experience. So you have to play your part. So what part are you going to play in order to have the experience of more abundance, for example? Perhaps the part you need to play is recognize what part you're playing right now. If the part you have been playing is that I am not worthy, you have to give that up. You have to let it go. You have to choose a different truth. And based on that of I am more than worthy, because we talked about it, and practicing that over and over again, remembering that over and over again, basically reconstructing your own belief system, you begin to see more for yourself and you begin to experience more for yourself. That's how we change our world. By starting with what's within. If we want a different world, we have to be able to see it in our minds. If we can't see it, we won't achieve it. So if we are focusing on bad, then that's where the energy, that's where focus goes. No, we can't do that unless we want to experience more quote unquote bad. And that's just to illustrate the point. We have everything that we need in order to experience a better world. But we first have to, absolutely have to, take care of our inner world. And every single human that I know of, including myself, has limited beliefs. Those beliefs, as they say, limit us. If we limit ourselves, we can't experience more. And there is always so much more, so much more, so much more out of life, so much more. So, with that, it's 55 minutes. Wow, that's a lot of talking. I hope this was helpful. I didn't think this was not how I planned it, but I actually really enjoyed it. So next week we'll do a pick a card, because now it's going to be way too long. And I feel like this is just what wanted to come through. So I would love to hear your comments, how this information has connected with you or not connected. Do you agree with it? Don't agree with it? Does it make you think? Does it make you ponder? Does it make you wonder? Does it make you go, isn't that interesting? Or are you being triggered? Whatever you experience, it's beautiful. It's your experience. Your experience is telling you something. At the end of the day, my aim is to help you remember who you are. To help you remember where you come from. To help you remember where you're going. To help you remember that you've never left. To help you remember that whatever it is that you're seeking, you are that already. You are that now in this moment. The only difference is you are not in experience of it because of what you believe. Yes, you can have the impossible. Not all, but you can have the impossible. That's not possible. Yeah. I've learned one thing. Never say never, because it usually bites me in the butt. So be careful what you ask for. All right. I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.